What's going on, guys? Welcome into the Bulls Report. My name is Patrick Siepman. Coming up on today's show, we have a loaded slate for you guys. The Lakers, there's a report out there that they are interested in Andre Drummond to be their Nikola Jokic stopper. We'll dive into that. Then also, Jalen Green, the Rockets are the last team to kind of get their kind of involved in the Zach LaVine trade sweepstakes. So could the Bulls land Jalen Green in that type of trade? We'll dive into that as well. And then Bleacher Report also put out an article listing their top 3 trade targets for each team, and they have a sniper that the Bulls could target at the deadline. But before we dive into that, we got a little Chat Sports like battle, and the Bulls Report is the last channel to go. So each 3 of these channels put out a video in the last week talking about a like battle, and the Knicks channel got 435, Celtics 376, the Heat Report got 345. Can we beat them? Can we go a little David versus Goliath versus these bigger channels? So if you guys haven't, drop a like on today's video. It's free, easy way to help support us here at Chat Sports, and I want to win the Chat Sports like battle, so drop a like on today's video. Let's kick it to what ESPN's Dave McMenamin said about Andre Drummond possibly going to the Lakers. He said the Lakers have also considered dealing for players who could address specific needs in a potential playoff matchup, such as Andre Drummond of the Bulls, in anticipation of a postseason rematch with the Denver Nuggets and their big front line of Nikola Jokic and Aaron Gordon, sources said. And Drummond does bring that size. I mean, every single time Drummond hits the basketball floor, you can feel his size on the court. And I've always said it, Drummond is the best rebounder per minute guy in the National Basketball Association, only playing 16 minutes a night this year, still averaging 8.4 rebounds per game. Obviously, defensively, he's not the rim protector, that you would want in a guy for the Lakers, but they do have Anthony Davis to be that guy. But just overall, size next to AD, I think Drummond makes a lot of sense. And, that's where I get to this point. Like, Drummond is one of the more hidden gems in the NBA. Like, I think you're going to have teams like the Boston Celtics, who need, more size next to Porzingis. Maybe a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Dallas Mavericks. These teams who need more size, in their front court, because you look around the NBA right now, there are a lot of big basketball teams that are going to be contending for championships. Obviously, like the Denver Nuggets, like we said, but the Milwaukee Bucks are always a bigger team. So these teams in each conferences, they could be looking at Drummond as not like a complete needle mover, but a guy to just help you get better on the margins. And I think the Lakers make a whole lot of sense for Drummond. But a trade idea that I cooked up here, Jalen Hood-Schifino, if you guys remember him, I think he went, 18th last year in the NBA draft, 17th in the NBA draft out of Indiana. What about just a straight-up trade for Andre Drummond for Jalen Hood-Schifino? Let's talk about it. But Hood-Schifino hasn't really played too much this year for the Lakers, but dating back to college in his freshman year at Indiana, where he's actually paired up with Trace Jackson Davis of the Golden State Warriors, they were a ton of fun to watch, and he averaged 13.5 points per night, 3.5 assists per night. Pretty solid efficiency as well for a freshman in college. It's always a little lower, but I'm a big fan of Hood-Schifino, and I think it would just be another guy that the Bulls could get. Just get these young players, get more draft capital if you are going to sell at the deadline. And I know what you might be saying is, why would the Lakers give up a guy they just took in the first round last year for a guy like Andre Drummond? Well, I could really see Rob Pelinka and the Lakers overpaying at the deadline to take advantage of LeBron's final years. LeBron, he has definitely beat out Father Time so far, but that wall is coming, and I do think Rob Pelinka, if they're looking around, the Lakers have a very good roster. They just need to get better in a couple of spots, and Hood-Schifino not really playing, and they could get a big upgrade at that center position. I think the Lakers would consider it. But would you? Would you accept this trade? Give me an A for accept or a D for decline. I'm 100% doing this. I see no reason not to. From the Bulls side of things, if you are in the camp that the Bulls should be sellers at the deadline, and you could get a young prospect like Hood-Schifino, I'd take it any day of the week. But let me know your thoughts. A for accept or D for decline. Let's talk about Jalen Green now, because, I said yesterday on the show that I think Zach LaVine, and I said in quotes, was like, he's going to go to a weird team, because we heard the Pistons kind of get involved in the LaVine sweepstakes. I don't think it's going to be like the Lakers or obviously the Heat anymore, like the Knicks, one of these true contenders. I think it's going to be a guy, when we get that notification, it's going to be like, LaVine got traded here, and I think the Rockets could be a choice. But let's talk about Jalen Green for a second, because I do think he would be at the front of a LaVine trade. And listen, if you look at stat sheet, almost 18 points a game, almost 5 boards, 3 assists, pretty solid. But he's also an incredibly inefficient basketball player. 40% from the field, 32% from downtown, and 30 minutes a game for the Houston Rockets. But if you even go further than that, he just overall was kind of a chucker. The catch and shoot 3-point percentage, that's more of like, if I'm looking at that, I would obviously, look at that for more of like a role player when you're using that stat, but, it's not good. 30% from there. Pull up 3-point percentage. He takes around 3 attempts per game. That's at 31 and a half, but the pull up midi field goal percentage at 36.3. Just awful for Jalen Green. And listen, like his type of game, he's a super athletic. He can put some pressure on the rim. But again, he's just an inefficient basketball player, and he's just, plays an AAU brand of basketball, and I just don't really think it would, ever translate to winning in the league, but he's definitely an interesting prospect. But this was a trade idea I actually cooked up here, and it's the Bulls receiving Jalen Green, Reggie Bullock, Victor Oladipo, and Tari Eason. This is all to help, match salary, with Jalen Green being the main trade piece for the Bulls. And then the Rockets would be receiving Zach LaVine, Torrey Craig, and a 2026 first-round pick, top 8 protected. I do think the Bulls, if you just take out the pick right here, I do think the Bulls would probably have to throw one in. I just think, if you're moving off LaVine's contract, I just think in most of these teams, you may have to include something. But the Bulls would be getting a young talent in Jalen Green. I'm probably doing this trade at the deadline. Again, it's going to come down to what other offers you could have. But, again, I'm in the camp. Get young players, get a lot of draft capital, and I think you could have a successful trade deadline for the Bulls. But that's a trade idea I cooked up. Let me know your thoughts on that down below. But coming up here in a second, Bleacher Report suggests a trade for this shooter for the Chicago Bulls. Oh, man, and they said the Bulls could be buyers if they do this move at the deadline. But we'll get into that here in a second. But I do first want to tell you guys about this great deal we have going on at chatsports.com/BullsCombo. You can get this 2 t-shirt pack for $20 off. I actually got this past summer. Super comfortable. Love wearing them. And they just do good stuff over there. So if you guys want to take advantage, I'll put that link for you guys in the comment section and description of today's show. Chatsports.com/BullsCombo. Check it out and take advantage. So the shooter that Bleacher Report suggested is this guy right here, Kevin Huerter. And again, the Kings are one of those teams that have kind of one of those weird teams that I think could trade for Zach LaVine, and they're one of the latest teams to get in that sweepstakes. But this is what Zach Buckley, writer for Bleacher Report, said about the Bulls potentially targeting him. He said, if Chicago wants to compete, again, hilarious that is how he starts off this quote. If Chicago wants to compete, then a shot creator like Brogdon or a net shredder, love that word, like Kevin Huerter would both be helpful. When the Bulls previously discussed a LaVine trade with the Sacramento Kings, Huerter's name was mentioned, according to Hoops Type's Michael Scotto. But I will say this about Huerter, it just doesn't make sense because it goes back to that first line of that quote. If Chicago wants to compete, do not think that. I will say this over and over again. The Bulls are stuck in this purgatory zone in the NBA where they're not good enough to compete for championships, but they're not bad enough to get a top 5 pick and get that true blue chip guy. So trading for a guy like Huerter just doesn't really make any sense. Yes, if the Bulls were in a situation where they were competing for a championship and they needed a shooter to help them kind of get better on the margins, sign me up for Huerter. I'm a big fan of his game. He is a net shredder, like Buckley said. Obviously having a not as good of a shooting year as he has in years past, but he's a guy he can black out at any moment, can really go win you a game in the playoffs. He goes off for 6 or 7 threes in a game. But where the Bulls stand right now, doesn't make sense to go get a guy like that. So I'll be out on trading for Kevin Huerter. Draft capital and young players that you can develop. Those are the 2 main kind of priorities for the Bulls at the NBA trade deadline. But I'll ask you guys, what is one move the Bulls need to make at this upcoming NBA trade deadline? Let me know your thoughts down below. I said it on our perfect trade deadline video. Number 1 move the Bulls need to make, trading Zach LaVine. That's what I would do. But let me know your guys' thoughts down below. As always, trade deadline, what do we got? A couple weeks away right now, so make sure you guys are subscribed here to the channel. See you guys next time, and as always, go Bulls.